You see in the African American the adoption of foreign methods not related to his African background nor to his political economic realities. And the major problem today in the economic development of black people is the lack of an economic system based on what I call a sound cultural analysis. And I don't mean a cultural analysis that goes on talking about how white folks mistreated us. That is not a cultural analysis, ladies and gentlemen. We got a lot of people here just doing endless research on how white people mistreated black people and getting all fired up over these kind of issues, instead of looking deep into the heart and soul and mentality of black people and looking deep into the character of black people and looking deeply at the organization of money and economy within the black community and using that analysis to create a realistic system. We got a lot of fools here reading Marx and other kinds of people whose analysis is based upon Europeans and who didn't come in with preconceived ideas to impose upon the African situation. And one thing I pointed out again and again and again, you can look at any African society, and whether it is Marxist, socialist, capitalist, or any other kind of ist, it is poor compared to its European people. And that must recognize then that the problem we confront is deeper than subscribing to European doctrines of Adam Smith and Marx. That subscribing to these European doctrines are not the solutions to our problems. Marxist theory is based upon an analysis of European culture, and his economic recommendations are based upon that analysis. And we have some fools here who want to call it scientific, and as if it's somehow universal and above and untouchable. And yet when they look at it in country after country in Africa and other places that have subscribed to it without being realistic about their economic and social position in the world, they can see that it has not benefited very much those nations and those people. And yet they react by holding on even more tenaciously to a philosophy that even the Russians are throwing out, that even the Chinese are throwing aside. And everybody's throwing aside that this Negro, the poorest of all, who is still trying to hold on to it for dear life and is not surviving. Does that mean Marxist ideas are no good? No, it doesn't mean that. It doesn't mean that at all. Does that mean we can't use it? No, I'm not saying that either. What I am saying, though, is develop your economic and social philosophy based upon your own political and social reality first. Now, you may find, as I have found when I look directly at the heart and soul of our people, that many of your conclusions may coincidentally parallel those of Marx. But the origin is not Marx. The origin is from our own selves. And that means that those ideas are our possession. And we don't have to ask white Marxists or any other group to interpret them for us. Any other group doesn't come into us and say, well, you know, how people started and Marx was a Jew or whatever, and, you know, we have the right to interpret what he meant by this and that. We don't have to deal with that. We can deal with it because we've developed it out of our own hearts and our own soul and our own reality. When I was trying to go into business, it puzzled me for a long time. Where is the black money? Where is it? You know? Black people, we hear again and again, if you look at the collective earnings and resources of black people in America, you have to recognize that they are the 9th or 10th richest nation on this earth. That we trade more with this country than does the whole nation of Canada. That we represent a tremendous amount of wealth. And that the problem then with the black community is not a problem of poverty. but it is the correct utilization of the wealth that we have and the correct development of the wealth that we have as people. It is the malallocation of the money that we have, not the lack of money at all. I was interested in one example he gave here of the Japanese tailor who was selling suits for $35, and he's selling to other poor Japanese who could not pay $35 at one time for a suit. So how do they solve the problem? The tailor's got to stay in business. The other people need a suit. Do they go down to SBA and apply for a loan? They could afford $5 a week, though. So they pull 7 people together, and the 7 put in their $5, and the first man gets his $35 suit. The tailor gets paid. The other man takes the suit home. And the next week, the next $35 come in, and on it go. And the money revolves, and the wealth revolves, and there's growth and development within the community, you see. Not looking outside of themselves, but looking where? Within themselves. Because ultimately that is the source of wealth. Not being externalized, but internalized, and looking into themselves is the basis of wealth. And using the revolving credit. These people did not go on welfare because they saw the welfare of their people as being their responsibility. And they organized in groups and clans and so forth, and saw to the welfare of their members, so that it was not necessary for them to go on welfare. And they took care of their members. And it served some other social and political purposes as well. It's very interesting to note those purposes. Contrast that with the Urban League and the social work approach that we find so prevalent in our community. That does not harness the resources of the so-called poor and use those resources and recirculate those resources and organize the poor in a way that their money can increase and be used for their advantage, but, takes a social work approach of delivering services from some external agency on to the people. A part of the receipt of benefits within the Japanese society was that you had to be a member of that society. And you were connected in that society. You were unified with the group. And it's within the context of this unity and membership that protection for the members take place. I realized as I tried to develop this business over here that the problem was not money in getting this business, because I hear a lot of people say, well, you must be paying healthy rent over there. But my idea was if the Asians could pay their rent in Harlem and make a living using only whose money? Black folks' money. Black folks' money. They're not even using Asian money up there. The Koreans are not even coming up there to do their shopping. And the others, they shopping somewhere in Koreatown, maybe somewhere else. Okay? The Hispanics, it's our money supporting their families, paying that rent. And believe me, rent on 125th Street can go as high as $5,000 or more a month. Favorite Shoes pays $10,000 a month right on that corner. But they have employees there, ladies and gentlemen. They're making money there. That implies what? That there is money over there. And if you can support this kind of rent with our kind of money, then we can support our own people with this kind of money. We can employ our own children with this kind of money. We can train and apprentice our own youth. We can get them out of the idea of having to steal and do the other kind of things that they do in these other places. We can build respect for self. I might have mentioned the fact I ran into one lady one evening. She mentioned that she lived out there somewhere. And I saw some sick Negro piece in New York Magazine. This a very ill piece. If you read this one here. Blacks at the top. Read this confusion. Very, 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 very ill. Pitiful. Because it shows they've reached the top and they still have problems. Identity problems and all kinds of other problems. That Frazier talked about even years ago in the Black Bourgeoisie. And somebody said, I'm scared to go to Harlem. You know, it's got a bit. Scared. It is a pity when you become more frightened among your own people than you do among another group of people. That is a real indictment, and many of us have that kind of fear. And we talk about the Howard Beaches, but still, on the whole, many of us still feel a little safer walking in those communities or some other communities than we do of our own. That is a major indictment of us as people. And who are we frightened of? Of our youth. Of our youth. That they're going to snatch our pocketbooks, they're going to stab us, they're going to do something to us. And that's a real fear, and it's a fear that has to be dealt with. And I'm not saying this is an illusion. It's real. And I'm not covering it over. It's a fear, it's a real concern. But what is the solution? To run out to Westchester, to run out here? Is that the end point of it? Not at all. In fact, that is a part of the basis for that fear having been created. And I told her, I said, you and she said, oh, they don't give me any respect. But it's interesting that you want respect from these youngsters when you're hardly contributing anything to their economic and social development at all. Why should they respect you? When you take your monies and your brain power and your other interests out and give it to another people, in a way, their anger and hostility has a certain logic to it. Because we've betrayed them. We have not given them an economic and social system and political system and network. We have not given them their inheritance and their due. We've robbed them of their inheritance. And consequently, they strike back at us with the only weapons that they're left with dishonor and with disrespect. And when we speak, they don't listen. Why should they? You don't pay my bills, right? In a way, they're right. What do we have to say about it? We are not feeding them. We are not caring for them. It's Big Daddy White Man. He's the ultimate papa in the world. So the only person I need to listen to is that one. And therefore, if we're to get back our self-respect and the respect of our children, then we have to establish control over our economic and social situation. The ownership of 125th Street, the ownership of all of these other streets around here, the ownership of downtown Manhattan is greater than any series of 10,000 lectures about the greatness of African people, I'm telling you. It's a contradiction to talk to your children about the greatness of African people. And then when they walk out, the whole community and everything is owned by somebody else. It's a joke. And in the end, they don't want to hear it. They don't want to be bothered with it. Because it doesn't develop into anything concrete, usable, a type of pride that doesn't take them anywhere, and they see often only leads them to trouble, and a kind of radicalism that doesn't permit them to become, quote unquote, a part of so-called mainstream. African nationalism must pay. We must demonstrate to people that believing in this ideology is not taking the side of poverty and degradation, but is a movement into wealth, and a movement into power, and a movement into greatness. And this is a part of the thing I'm about there. I'm trying to demonstrate, hey, I believe in Africa. I love Africa. I am African. And I believe in the greatness of my people. And it pays. It pays. There's wealth connected with this belief. There's power connected with this belief. There's strength and respect connected with this belief. not just an empty knowledge of history and an empty boasting that tries to substitute for a hungry stomach, but something that's real, that translates into real power. And this is what we must demonstrate. And when our children can walk out and see that, the Africanists is absorbed into their very bone marrow. It becomes a part of their lifeblood. And there's no reason why we cannot think of taking over the economic reins of this country. When we look at what the thing that I learned there, and the thing that I think you see in these many examples that Light gives here, is not so much the money, but the social relationship between people as being the very key. The social relationship and interrelationship between people. These systems cannot work unless there is trust, unless there is confidence in one another. Some of these associations work because they were kinship groups. Some of them work because they came from the same village or carried the same last name. But they came from some cultural entity that tied them together emotionally and socially, such that they could trust each other. They could make loans then without collateral, because their word was their bond, and it was important that their family honor be kept high, because that was the basis for which they gained their wealth to advance their economic and social interests, you see. So that when I say something, I say it because my family will back me up, and even if I fail, my family will see that my debt is paid. Because it is dishonorable for me to make this pledge to you from my village, from my people, from my background, and not pay you back. And the whole family was a part of that, you see. And you can see then it was the social relationships more so than the banks or any other financial instrument that we look so much to today that was the foundation of the growth and development of these people and allowed them to move forward. And I recognize in my own business development over there in Harlem, it was the same thing. As I told you, I lost my job last year because of the kinds of stands I take. But I saw this place there. And how did I get it? Because I had talked to a guy in friendship one day. Comes up to the shop. We just talked. Oh, yeah, I remember you. You used to be on the radio. You used to be the communicator. You know, and some of you might remember the communicator back in the 60s, 70s. RVR. Beautiful vignettes of black life and the whole bit. And so just talk and reminisce, and you know, there's a whole beautiful social moment there of connection. And we became friends. And then I saw this place to be rented there. And I went downtown and I said, let me see who owns this place so I can see what the rent is. Still no money in my pocket, you know. And I often tell people, because the first question they often ask, well, what's the rent? And right away when they hear the rent, they're through. So I think don't ask the rent and don't ask about where you're going to get the money from. Cue in on what you want to do. And start about doing it as if you have what is necessary to get it done. And you'd be surprised at how things begin to fall in place for you. And then it forces you to begin to be creative, you see, in your thought processes and things like this, and to look at alternatives and things that were not visible before. They become visible then, but if you give up at the first instant when you hear that rent, then all the other part is never going to come up. It's nil from that point on. I looked in there and I said, oh, this place is rented by Harlem Commonwealth Council. Let me call them up and ask about it. And when I call up, who answers the phone but the person I had talked to? Hey, this is you, Amos. Yeah, this is you. I'm in now. That business, and of course here comes these forms. What was your earning last year? You know, all of those kinds of things. But I had a friend there. You see what I'm saying? Because I didn't have your accountant send us. I don't have that, man. I'm not, we don't have that kind of thing, This is my idea. This is my dream. This is, where I want to go with it. Well, can you send this? No, I can't do that now. But hey, I'm going to fight for you. I'm going to struggle for you. And he fought and he struggled, and there were people in there who wanted to do business as usual. And he got through. Now my next problem was, how in the hell am I going to get the rent up? But I got that. Creative thinking, though. Let's get upon the lady. Somebody's got a house here. Paid for. Oh, you got to take chances. You got to take risks. I mean, it's no business. And a lot of us want to go into business without taking risks. When we talk about Egypt and its greatness, Egypt had to defend this agriculture. It had to defend its wealth. It had to struggle. Often, sometimes it had to take from. People lost lives and they took risks and chances. And too many of us want the goodies without taking any risk whatsoever.